Hello, and welcome to the Vicars Watch Dibley,
the podcast where three priests link our stories to those of the Reverend Geraldine Granger and other TV vicars. I'm Kate.
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Ruthie. This episode we're talking about autumn. Not the season, but the episode autumn. And it's an episode all about Geraldine having a relationship with Simon. And so we're going to talk about sex and relationships and expectations for clergy. And it's all going to be quite a lot, isn't it?
Belton.
Hello everyone, how are we doing?
Hi, Kate.
Oh, it's nice to be back, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't it lovely? We're recording, it's the first week of Lent, and I don't know about you two, but I'm quite enjoying it. I don't know why, I'm in a good mood today.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, looking at me and Jenny, we're both quite cold. Covered in blankets.
Got a hot water bottle snuggled in here as well.
So if you hear jiggling water.
It's been a cold spell. And dear listener, wherever you are, we hope that you are snugly and warm.
Oh, yes. Pray the coziness upon you. Amen.
Unless you're in the southern hemisphere, and then we hope that you're feeling nice and cool.
Yeah. We hope your body temperature is optimum.
What a lovely way to start the pod.
What's something that we've loved this week, really?
Well, it hasn't happened yet, but I'm very excited because this week is World Book Day. And I love World Book Day, and I've been making a costume for my 3-year-old who's going to go as Zog to nursery. So I've made some little wings and a badge. If you don't know who Zog is, it's a great book. Zog and the Flying Doctors and all this kind of thing. But I've been invited to go to one of the local primary schools and read some books with year ones.
Gosh, that's so
part
cool.
of World Book Day, and I'm so excited. And they're doing, like lots of other schools are doing. Actually, you can just come in your comfy clothes or something like that if you don't want to come dressed up as a book character, to help people save money. Or you can come dressed up. And so I'm trying to decide which to do. Do I want to go in comfy clothes or do I want to dress up?
Is that really a question for you? Because my heart goes, of course you're going to dress up. Like, that's not really the question.
But then the question is as who?
Well, that is a major question.
Reverend Geraldine Granger from the book The Scripts of the Vicar of Dibley.
Yes!
I've come dressed as a vicar. But yeah, so that's my plan. How about you, Jenny?
That's exciting. Well, I'm not having a great week, so I'm scraping the barrel today. I am loving wearing my yellow coat.
Oh, Jenny!
I'm loving wearing my yellow coat and going for walks. And actually, I have been really noticing this last week. It's a bit of a full-on time in my life. Well, not in my life, but just generally. Loads going on. And I love going for a walk to clear my head, as I've mentioned many times. And when I don my coat, put on my hat, Henry in hand, I'm just like, yeah. And it resets me, like, every single time. Whether I'm on my own or chatting away to God, listening to music or with other people. It's just such a good way to kind of reset. So what am I loving? Walkies, yeah, but my yellow coat.
Oh.
Like I said, scraping the barrel this week. Sorry, guys.
No. I think if I was to just picture you, it would be in that yellow coat.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
such
I
a
think that's
happy
a go-to
coat.
Jenny outfit.
I do love yellow.
What about Kate? What do you love? What have you been loving this week?
Well, something I've been loving this week is actually just before a recording session, I was deep in putting together a service booklet. And this is super, super nerdy, but I love, love, love putting services, liturgy together. I love formatting. I love getting all the words to fit. I love finding the right words and playing around and finding the right imagery, like pictures. And yeah, really love doing it. I just love it. One of my favourite parts of a job.
I get that.
It's really cool, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing to do.
Exciting.
There's something very satisfying about getting services into a really neatly printable range. Like, so that you don't have extra blank pages at the end of a booklet.
Yeah.
And
This is nerdy, but I'm so there. Just editing all your spacing and going,
editing
can I
your
just
spacing
wiggle this?
And the right font, there's a new font out, which I really want to plug. It's called Atkinson Hyperlegible.
Yeah.
This is so cheeky. It's my favourite font. Yeah, so, no, it's available. It's for download. It's from the Braille Society, I think. But anyway, it's a newly designed font, which is designed to be hyper legible, so really easy to read.
Wow.
If you have, for various different visual impairments and also dyslexia. They've taken loads of little things that have been used in previous different fonts and learning to actually combine everything into one much more legible font. Atkinson Hyperlegible. It's free for download. It's on Google Fonts now as well.
Cool.
I'm using it in everything, and it looks really good. So yeah,
brilliant. Love that accessibility.
That's
a
very. There's a niche audience in that, and I think some of our listeners will be that. He'll go, "Oh, new font, very interesting.
A new font for service booklets."
Or lesson plans or whatever whatever job you might have where people need to read stuff.
Yeah, true.
That's your font. What are we doing today, Jenny?
Well, we've been having some fun. What are we doing today? We are looking at season 3, episode 1, which is Autumn in the DVD series name list. And we're going to go through. We have actually got the book with the script in it, so we can hold ourselves accountable to the literal scene by scene. I think we all had quite a lot of fun watching back this episode. Am I right in thinking that? We've got some. It's pretty juicy. It's a juicy one, guys. This one. This one might be worth watching back at some point for yourselves and enjoying it and giggling along with us. There's a lot of stuff coming up that, like I say, a bit juicy.
Yeah, so we've got a bit of a disclaimer to begin with. We will be talking about sex quite a lot in this episode in its many different forms. And just to note that there are a huge variety of opinions about sex and the appropriateness of it in relationships within the church and within Christianity, and we will be making some kind of sweeping statements about stuff and how Geraldine understands sex and how her parishioners do, which aren't necessarily our opinions, but they also might be, and we're just putting that out there at the beginning that we don't want shame culture to be brought up in all of this and people to feel awful after listening to this, and we also don't want people going, well, that's not in the Bible or whatever might be said about this. So there's a variety of opinions. If there's any particular issues that we come across that might be trigger warnings, we'll put links in the description to the kind of timestamp for that if that's helpful. But yeah, just to warn you, let's talk about sex, baby.
Yeah. Although we won't be getting explicit about sex.
No.
It's worth also this isn't an episode which will be marked explicit, so don't worry about we are going to be getting into detail.
But if you're listening with small people around, you might have to have some conversations with them. The birds and the bees. So, to the vicarage. And Geraldine is there with Alice and Hugo. It's been about 2 years since the previous series, and we're now hearing from Alice and Hugo, who have been on their honeymoon, but they've had an extended honeymoon. Their honeymoon has lasted 14 months, and that's because Hugo's been accidentally drug smuggling.
Accidentally.
We should
a brilliant example of both Hugo and Alice's naivety. In a lovely lady at the airport asked them to carry a bag through for her.
Yes. And
classic.
Yeah. He £84 million worth of cocaine was in it. So
they've got the holiday snaps to prove it as well, haven't they?
Yeah, they go through their snaps together with it, and yes, they it's been interesting. And Hugo is now going to counselling as part of this. I think they potentially think he might have PTSD, and he has a slightly odd phrase, doesn't he?
Yeah, he says that he needs to act doolally because he feels sorry for the counsellor. And this is something we'll flag. It's not the theme of the episode, but it is one of those things that really, I think, dates this show. Is we're in conversations about mental health, and there's another scene a little bit later on. It's this performative. I'm going to use the word madness in this kind of recognising that that's not really what we mean, kind of in contemporary sense, but this kind of acting weird and silly, and he crawls around on the floor.
Yeah.
Because if you are mentally unwell, then clearly you must be completely beyond capacity. Doolally is the word he uses.
The way I understood that bit was that because he'd been in prison for 14 months. Oh, this is such a minor point, isn't it? But it's like suddenly it's such a minor one. But it is, it's interesting. So he says about having to see a therapist because they're worried about him. And then I think the crawling on the floor is meant to be like where he is actually at, if that makes sense. That's how I understood it.
Oh,
they're saying, they say I'm doolally, but I'm absolutely fine. Anyway, see you guys later. And then he crawls away because that's what he's used to from his experience. Yeah. But I don't know, I could be wrong.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I connected it more with like that episode in Blackadder in the 4th season of Blackadder, where Blackadder's trying to get out. It's the last episode, and he sticks pencils up his nose and wears pants on his head and says "flibble," and it's again that sense of it's very dated. I don't think we would necessarily have it anyway. I just thought we'd flag that up, that this is one of those things which does date, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more. And if you need therapy,
that's fine.
Yeah, go
exactly.
Man. Enjoy.
As someone who has gone to therapy many times, if it helps, it's good.
Absolutely.
Be honest about yourself.
Yeah,
that's all you can do.
So Hugo crawls off to therapy, and Geraldine is having the conversation with Alice about married life and how are things in the bedroom, and how's that all going.
To which I think she thinks it's about the bedroom furniture. So she's like, it's very tricky. Very tricky at the start. Yeah. Couldn't find out what went where. But as soon as you put the wardrobe in, everything made sense, which I was just like, classic VOD. It's just perfect.
I mean, do you think Geraldine is asking this question as a friend or as the vicar? Have you, as a vicar, ever asked a couple about their sex life?
No.
Yes.
Sort of. We've got a full spectrum of experience here.
Why no, Jenny?
So no, because I might change my mind, or I might, in my ministry years, I may change my mind. So I think talking about sex is really important, but I don't necessarily believe it's the place of the vicar to talk about it. It's probably because my overarching assumption is that couples would have done that talking, that working out, maybe even a lot of the lived experience of having a sexually active relationship themselves, and they don't need me to speak into it. Also, I think it is a kind of a privacy thing. It's a kind of, expectation that they'll have, be talking about it themselves and, being open with each other. I kind of maybe too often trust that couples will be doing that. But also, I felt like I couldn't really speak into it because I didn't really have anything to say on it. I wouldn't have known what to say. And also, especially before I was married as well, I had nothing to talk about when it comes to marriage advice, really, or, the sexual side of marriage. And so, I think that's probably why it was a no for me. I would give them a booklet with some preparation questions and stuff around sex and expectations of sex and that kind of thing, because I think it is really important. For me, though, it's a no. It just didn't feel like it was my place. But Ruthie, why yes?
So you thinking in the context, especially of marriage prep, if you were getting a couple ready to get married, this is the kind of place you'd have those conversations.
Because I would also, say if I saw them back from honeymoon, I would also never say, how's it going, guys? With cheeky eyebrows. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I think I'd die. Maybe it's because I'm a prude, but also I just feel that is so not my area of like to talk to them about. But I do think obviously spiritual care, there is a side of that which where sexual intimacy and that do cross over. Very open to talking to couples if they wanted to talk to me about it, but I would never raise it with them first.
So in marriage prep, I do talk about sex as part of it.
Tell us more.
Because partly because I think there's this myth that is perpetuated by culture and society that as soon as you get married, that's when the sex stops and it all gets boring and I've got a headache and all that kind of stuff. And actually, I think the liturgy, the words that we use in the marriage service suggest the opposite. Actually, you should grow more in love and knowledge of each other as you're married. And actually, sex should get even better. And if you're already having it, I think the majority of couples that we marry nowadays, in the context that we're in, are probably living together beforehand.
Yeah.
They come with the same address.
With children as well.
And with
sometimes.
children.
Yeah.
And so you think you guys have probably had sex before. And so just to talk about that and go, this it doesn't stop now. Actually, you keep discovering more about each other and what you like and how you are as a couple should develop and grow. But also on the other side, if it is a couple coming to marriage who have not been sexually intimate beforehand, I think it's really important to talk about it beforehand, because I know many married couples who got married, neither of them had ever had sex before, and then are just like, I don't know what to do, and there can be so much trauma involved, and people just have no idea where to put things, and it's not just in the wardrobe and how to do it, and it could be quite painful for people. I mean, to begin with, because your body's getting used to it, and I think the church needs to be better at talking about it and not just been seen as we don't talk about sex and you just keep it in your bedroom. I'm not going to say, what's your favourite position? And here's one to try later. Here's a guidebook for various positions to try. Because actually that is something that's between you as a couple. But just to say, you should be talking about sex. Keep talking about sex.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I probably fall somewhere in between the both of you in terms of how much I include sex talk as part of marriage preparation. I always make sure that I make it clear to the couple that they should be talking about sex, about their expectations, about
your sex expectations,
about what they need from each other. That they should have clear lines of communication. I say, I don't need to have your details.
Yeah, definitely.
You need to be talking about this, just as you'll be talking about finances and you'll be talking about
children.
Children. Stress, family, all pressure. That.
When in the context of a marriage service and the vows, I do sort of unpick a little bit, about consent, about what it means to honour someone, and kind of with my body I honour you, and I say, this is actually mentioning sex, and we touch on it, and then it's depending on the couple, how much more I'd unpick that. I think with a couple who are already established, living together, they already have a sex life, it's mostly about making sure they know what consent is, what their expectations of each other is, and what counts as cheating, all of that.
That's a good one.
But they have healthy lines of communication. I think a less experienced couple, I don't think I've done a wedding for a couple which haven't had sex before marriage, to my knowledge. I don't know. I don't pry too much. I think then we might go into it a little bit more, because there is that aspect of expectation without experience. And again, not going into detail, but then reflecting on, I think particularly because in the church, and a lot of people who have made the choice to wait until marriage will have been involved in some sort of purity culture. Or teaching along those lines. I think there's a lot to unpick to help reflect on what the change. There's lots to unpick with that couple. But it's on a couple by couple basis.
And I'm not doing it just to be the pervy vicar, because that is creepy. You don't want that. But I think because I've kind of come from some of that purity culture stuff, and I know that it's done damage to me in some ways. Actually, I think it's really important that we talk about it better and go, do you know what, if you're having a really rubbish time with sex, go talk to someone and, you know, have those conversations with people, because it shouldn't be like that. You should have a nice time with it. It should be great.
Normalise checking in with people.
Yeah.
And like close friends. Like, I've asked Ruthie how things are going, not for detail, but you know, maybe not. Let's include that. But, you know, you have friends who are
definitely
who you're checking in with, and those people you trust to be able to talk about what's happening.
Definitely.
And I think particularly, one thing that particularly brings this to home for me was an article I was reading about the trauma for women in purity culture, where if all of your value kind of pre-marriage was you have been celebrated for maintaining your purity, and that makes you a good Christian because you've maintained your purity, then once you actually have sex, even if, you know, it's in marriage, you can lose your sense of goodness, because that thing which has made you holy is now gone. And that's a horrible, horrible interpretation of what purity is, and it is misteaching, but that's one of those things which you really need to help people unpick.
And
definitely.
And there's something as well there, you know, if something isn't your choice as well, if a sexual experience happens that isn't your choice, what does that say about
absolutely.
you? I mean, 1 in 4 women will be sexually assaulted in some way. If it's taken from you, how do you deal with that?
There are some,
we got deep quick, didn't we?
I was going to say, some really damaging teaching out there as well.
And it's worth also just saying, as much as we've talked about the female experience, because we are women and that is our experience, this also affects men as well.
Massively.
And
feeling the need to
else on
perform
the
and
spectrum.
all this kind of stuff. It's a mess. But and well, going back to the episode, one of the reasons that I talk about sex with couples is because Alice, bless her, has been playing Hide the Purple Parsnip and has been gaining lots of weight and feels rather sick.
I'm feeling sick in the morning.
Yeah, weird, isn't it? And doesn't quite understand what's going on. But she did and Geraldine asked her, you know, is there a chance that she might be pregnant? And oh no, she did the test. She weed on a hamster.
I love
and
this, and it's supposed to turn blue. I wanted to ask, have either of you got any old wives' tales of how to know if you're pregnant or how to know if you're carrying a boy or a girl? Have you ever picked up on any of those? Or
I've heard some. I've heard one about peeing on straw. I can't remember like how it told you. And I heard another one which is about you've put a coin on a piece of string, and if it spins, it's a boy, and if it goes back and front, it's a girl, or the other way around.
That's good. I love these sorts of things. I picked up a longer labour means it's a boy, or heartburn means there's going to be loads of hair. Apparently heartburn for hair is a thing.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I think there's that classic one, isn't there? If a woman's carrying low, it's a boy. If she's carrying high, it's a girl. That's like obviously not a pregnancy test, more like actual baby.
Which, that was me. Apparently, if it's all at the front, a boy. If you're wider at the side, it's a girl. And from the back of me, I did not look pregnant. From the front of me, I looked very pregnant. And lo and behold, Benjamin appeared.
Did you try the hamster test, Ruthie, when you were working out if you were pregnant or not?
Do you know what? I didn't have a hamster readily available, so I didn't try the hamster test.
Probably for the best, actually. That's definitely animal cruelty, isn't it?
There's an issue there.
Sorry, I didn't realise that.
There must be a huge market for hamsters in Dibley. But also, if ever a couple needed support with family planning,
it would be these two, wouldn't it?
Alice and Hugo, especially given the knowledge we have from future episodes with how many children they have.
They're prolific, I think is a good word to use here.
Absolutely.
So Alice explains about the hamster pregnancy test in Dibley, and the phone rings, and she goes off and picks up the phone. Hiya, it's the vicarage, and it turns out that Simon is on the phone. Now,
dear listener, you may not remember Simon since it's a while since we on this podcast let's discussed him.
Yeah, couldn't remember where we'd had him. But it was at the wedding, wasn't it? Alice and Hugo's wedding.
Yes.
Uncle Simon to Hugo, isn't it?
Uncle Simon, who Geraldine dyed her hair blonde for.
Hello, Blondie.
Yes, and
nearly jacked in a job for, by the way, as well.
Yeah, that's true. And it's called the Vicarage to chat to Geraldine, and Geraldine gets all fizzy with joy and is a bit fluttery on the phone and says, "Oh, I haven't heard from you in ages," and arranges to see him on Saturday. Now, do we think that Geraldine and Simon have been sort of dating while Hugo's been in prison or not?
Yes.
No. Why am I a big no girl this episode? I don't know.
Jenny, explain your no.
Oh, I get to go first again. Right, no, I don't think they have. So, when the phone goes, obviously Alice answers and she goes, "Uncle Simon!" Geraldine's eyes light up. She was like, "What? Who? Holy moly." As she rushes over to the phone, she grasps it out of Alice's hand and she's like, "Oh my gosh." She's very fizzy, she's very flustered. And I was thinking, where did we last see Simon? It took me a while to remember. In fact, I think I remember saying to you guys, I was like, when did we last see Simon? And it was Alice and Hugo's wedding and all of that kerfluffle, where she nearly even moves all the way up to Liverpool in order to be closer to him. Yeah. I don't think that they've had any relations or chats since then, simply because of her absolute excitement at him calling, because he then goes to say, "Oh, you're going to come up this way? Oh, you're coming to see David? That's amazing." And then he starts. She knows it's going to be a flirty call because Simon's built like that. He's a flirty kind of charismatic guy. And I think that they have a conversation. It's like, "You want to do what? You want it? Wouldn't that melt? Oh, that would make it all better." And all of a sudden, all of this stuff starts to happen, and you straight away you're like, "Oh, this is what this is." Out of the blue, I think is out of the blue. Kate, what do you think?
No, I disagree.
Is there a backstory here?
I think there is a pretense for Alice's benefit that they haven't been talking. I think that's where I haven't heard from you in so long comes from. They are trying to talk around Alice because they don't want really the Hortons to know. I think they've been having phone calls. I don't think they've necessarily been meeting up, but I think they have remained in contact and they've been having a little bit of a flirt. And my reasoning for this is, if they haven't been in contact, their conversations get explicit very, very quickly.
Yeah.
They do.
And I know Geraldine is flirty, but I don't think she's that type of flirty, where after having not heard from someone for 14 months, she'd immediately start talking about food in the bedroom with them.
I think, I could be wrong, my punt as well, though, is about what's Simon like. And I think Simon's that sort of person that would just go there straight away and have a bit of a rippling effect on the receiver of his words.
So, let's say, I just want you to imagine with me, Jenny.
It's hard, though, because I'm answering as me, the person.
Pre-marriage, pre-Jenny
am I
being
answering
married.
as Geraldine, though?
No,
You've got to remember, Geraldine's in a place where she is ready to meet. And she thought her and Simon was really good.
Let's just imagine this, though. Okay. Like, remember back to when you were single and you were desperate to meet someone, okay?
I was not that desperate.
You started... Let's say you started talking to a guy.
Open.
You met a guy and you were vibing, right?
To meet someone. Yeah.
But then silence. Yeah. No, stop interrupting. Complete silence for over a year. You don't hear from this guy for over a year. before that silence, you were talking, your conversations didn't get particularly intimate or explicit, but you were vibing.
I should hope not.
Nothing from him for over a year.
Yeah.
Out of the blue, he calls you and says, I'm going to come and stay with you, and I'm going to spend all my time in your bedroom, and we're going to eat food off each other.
Yeah, I get the picture.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Your reaction would not be to immediately play in to that. I think you'd have a lot of what?
Yeah.
I'd
there'd
be ringing
a
the
lot.
police, to be honest.
Yeah, it's creepy if they haven't been in contact at least a little. It's really, really creepy.
But the thing
out
is,
of the blue for someone you haven't talked to in over a year to be like,
oh yeah, it is
hello.
over a year. It is over a year. But they did have a very significant time over the time of the wedding.
No, they didn't.
They
barely
did.
talked to
She
each other.
dyed her hair for him.
Yeah, but
she was
that
going to
wasn't
give up
because
her job
but
for
that
him.
wasn't because of a profound connection. She overheard him saying, "Oh, I really like blondes," and then she went and dyed his hair. That was a profound connection moment.
I think it was also. Have you ever met? There's just some people in life that you meet them and then make you go a bit weak at the knees.
But
and I hate to feel it. And Simon is
Horton.
that for Geraldine.
Simon
is that
Horton
for
is
Geraldine.
not that person.
I
Okay.
think she is.
Ding, ding, ding. Ding, ding, ding.
Okay.
Round over. Round over.
What do you think, Rube?
I think that they might have had some phone conversations in between.
Oh! Yes! But why would we have been privy to those as the audience, though?
No. Yeah.
Vote on Twitter after the episode.
Yeah.
Have they been
Have
talking?
they been talking?
Okay. Oh.
I want to bring up another thing that I think we all disagree on about whether Geraldine has had penetrative sex before.
I'm
Has
saying
she
yes
gone?
to this.
Has she gone
But
to fourth base?
I would say yes because of the episode where she pulled out a rock vinyl and it was signed from like something like to Flopsy from this is really bad remembering, sorry.
Yeah.
Do you remember the one? And it's like to my Flopsy bunny from your, and then it was definitely a massive innuendo.
I think no.
Why do you think
no?
Because the way she acts on the sofa, and because Alice says to her about, oh, when you're married you can go to bed and that's scrummy, and she says, oh, so I'm told. And I think she's done other things and maybe gone to other bases, but I don't think she has. I think this might be her first time.
I think she's just saying that
Counterpoint.
for Alice.
Yeah, I think she's dissembling, if we're using Pride and Prejudice language. She is... I think Geraldine as a character tends to be quite clear that she's had a past,
Yeah.
but she doesn't rub it in people's faces. And my reasoning to think she has had penetrative intercourse before is partly because of things she said in other episodes, but in this episode, when David Horton, we're skipping ahead, but when David Horton says goodbye to her when Simon's in there and it's really obvious that they're going to be going to the bedroom, David says something like, I hope you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And Geraldine says, I think I can remember.
Oh yeah, I'd forgotten that.
I think she's played it up. And I think...
I think that's true as well.
I think she isn't... People just think she's very experienced because she's open about some of the stuff, but I don't think... I think this is a new thing for her, and I think that's why she has... Partly because it's been so public, but later in the episode, why she has such a big meltdown when things go wrong.
So I think let's
yes,
agree
I see that. Yeah.
it could probably be interpreted either way. And I think her reaction at the end of the episode is valid, whatever her previous experience has been. And I think what we need to make clear is, in a way, it doesn't really matter too much whether or not she has before, except for potential emotions that she may be going through, which would inform some of what happens in the episode.
Because Alice talks to her about, you definitely can't have had sex before, and you've got to wait till you're married, because what she says, though it isn't scrummy if you're not married, of course, because then you go to hell and all your bits drop off, and especially if you're a vicar. then God would probably have to strangle you with his bare hands, is what Alice says.
And she's like,
Whether there is a punishment for this or not, the suggestion is that if you're a vicar, there is a worst one. And there are kind of different guidelines that were given as reverends, isn't there? There's been a big thing about a booklet called Issues in Human Sexuality, which is old and outdated and is going, praise the Lord. But it has guidelines about vicars having sex before marriage, and it's a no-no.
Yes, when we got ordained, we had to sign a document saying that we had read Issues in Human Sexuality and that we agreed to abide by it. And we were told, if you do not sign this, you will not get ordained. And it essentially said anything outside of the church's recognition of marriage is a no-no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really tough because I think for some people they're like, yeah, and like, of course. And then for others it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. It's so interesting because culture is so different to kind of, you know, standard teaching on how, you know, what God might have what God has intended for marriage or for sex or relationships. And it's such an opposite place really to what societal or cultural teachings on sex, which I think has changed enormously in like the last 20 years.
And just understandings on bodies and
you know,
different sexualities and all
absolutely.
this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
really important. But
because one of the major criticisms of Issues in Human Sexuality is it means unless you are heterosexual, you can never have sex. Because only heterosexual couples, according to church law, can get married.
Yeah.
And that's horrible. That's horrific. Because,
There we go. We're on the first scene still.
Conclude that, yeah.
Our next scene, we go to the parish council.
The parish council.
We have a bit more ableist language, calling Owen a lunatic.
Oh yeah, bless him. And he says he's got the papers to prove he's not. Oh,
Yeah.
But let's move on from that. Frank's in love with Owen. Or has been.
Yeah.
That was a
I'm
revelation.
shipping them now. I'm shipping them. That would be lovely. I could imagine a whole scenario in a different world where they settle down together on their farm as a lovely gay farming love.
Oh. During this revelation, they're talking and they're getting all grumpy with each other and throwing insults at various different things, aren't they? And the term Baldylocks is used at David, which is very funny. And then they've all just fallen out over stuff, and Geraldine is trying to bring them back together and get them to be getting on and loving each other and caring for each other and saying, you know, I'm here for you, I know you guys are here for me, my house is your house, and if you ever needed me, I'd be there, and I hope that's the case for you, and all that kind of thing. And just trying to get them back together, which is going to be significant later on.
Yeah.
And dealing with people who are falling out is something that is a big part of clergy life. And
Yes.
obviously we can't go into that right now because we can't tell you all the stories of the people that we've had as falling outs with, and we've had to patch up relationships between other people together. But that is
true.
a big
Wherever
thing.
there's people, it's a thing, isn't it? Wherever there's people, there's going to be conflict.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the hardest realizations when you're training, or when you've started ministry, is that people will fall out. It doesn't matter what you do, people will fall out. They'll fall out with each other and they'll fall out with you. And what's important is learning how to navigate that and how to build bridges, mend bridges, resolve that conflict, bring about peace.
Defo.
Yeah. And so from that, we're over to Horton Manor, and Geraldine and David are just hanging out together because Hugo and Alice aren't there. And I think this is a bit of an insight into life for David post Hugo getting married. That, is Geraldine coming round more and just having a whiskey with David, and all this kind of stuff is happening, and it's interesting.
I think we've seen some real character growth with David in terms of his bubble has been broken. With Alice coming into their house, he is having to learn to rely on other people, to trust on other people. Because even when it was just him and Hugo, he didn't really trust Hugo or rely on Hugo. But what we're seeing is him branching out and reaching out, his beautiful friendship with Geraldine, which is growing, and his desire to invest in that friendship. And I think also he is being protective of Geraldine. I think, I don't know about the two of you, but I think he knows that there is something happening between him and between his brother and Geraldine. The way he sort of says, oh, let's play Scrabble, or, you know, there's this whole thing about him wanting to spend time with her on a Saturday evening, or spend time with her when his brother's visiting. And it feels almost like he is... There's something there, and I don't know whether it's a competition with his brother over the time. I think there is something about his relationship with Simon, and there is something of a struggle over Geraldine between them. But I generally read David in this episode not as being romantically protective, but just protective of his friend Geraldine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I think we see that come out later. I would be hesitant to not read that in at this stage, but definitely see that coming in later, which is nice. And then maybe a development from protective, you know, friend parishioner into potentially something more romantic. Let's see what the series has for us.
So do you think David's doing a bit of matchmaking with Simon and Geraldine, inviting her over for dinner?
No, I think it's the other way around. I think he's trying to prevent a match being made. I think he knows from the encounter at the wedding that Geraldine
has a crush.
Has a crush
by
on
him.
on Simon. And I think David knows enough about his brother, and potentially about his brother's relationship, which we'll get on later, to know that it's not going to end well for Geraldine.
Yeah.
The other interpretation is that he doesn't want his brother, they're fighting over a toy, you know, but I don't think that's not what I'm reading.
No. I think he's oblivious at this point, and that's why he invites them over for dinner. But later on, he is not oblivious anymore.
Yeah.
But Alice and Hugo barge in, and they have wonderful news. The hamster test was wrong. They are pregnant. And David is stunned into silence with shock and fear and going, oh, goodness me. And Geraldine has to carry it, the celebrations of how wonderful it is.
Aww.
And Geraldine takes Alice out into the hallway because she's clearly been thinking a lot about what Alice has said about you can't have sex before marriage, otherwise all your bits drop off and all this kind of thing. And says that she's been reflecting and doesn't think that that is the case anymore, that actually it's all right. It's not a mortal sin for vicars to have sex as long as they don't rub it in their parishioner's face.
And it makes Alice feel a little bit queasy.
Yeah. And so what is mortal sin as opposed to just sin?
Is a mortal sin like, again, that's a bit more Roman Catholic theology. If it's like like cardinal sin, like it's an ultimate unforgivable sin, which I'm not sure in our theology we subscribe to, because I think we believe, well, I believe, I think we talked about this a little bit another time, was that all sin is the same. I think that the only thing that's specific is blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. In Scripture, I think the general agreed idea is that all sin is the same. But I think Jesus also says that blasphemy against the Holy Spirit is like the one sin that can't be forgiven.
Alice gets a bit queasy about this revelation. And before we move to the next scene, one thing that I noticed in this scene when they're in the hallway, there's a picture of Alice in her wedding dress in the background.
Oh, I missed that.
And I thought, I think David's probably put that up because Hugo, they've been off on honeymoon and, you know, been in prison and all that kind of thing. And I just thought that was a really lovely touch, that Alice in her wedding dress is in the hallway.
That's really sweet. I might go back and see if I can find that.
Yeah.
Just a sidebar, did any of you watching this episode, because the previous few episodes have been in the future according to the timeline of the series, and we've had that huge Alice's renovation of the
pink
manor.
living room.
Did either of you, were either of you surprised that it wasn't like that?
Yeah. Watching it again go, oh, it's a different living room.
Disappointed, if anything.
So from that living room, we go to Geraldine's living room at the vicarage, and she is prepping for Simon to come over that Saturday, and she's got a fabulous red dress on. She's lighting candles, mood lighting. It's all very romantic. And she goes up to the portrait of Jesus that she has hanging up, turns it around and says, I don't think this is your night, mate.
Yeah, I think that's a very telling action. I think whatever you believe about whether or not having sex before or outside of marriage is a sin, if you are actively doing things to symbolically say, Jesus, don't watch me when I'm doing this, where you are hiding something from Jesus, I think you know what you actually believe deep down.
Yeah. That's a bit of a worrying one, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a bit like taking off your cross before a date. I'm sure I did that once. I'm sure I thought, oh, it's not that I'm taking it off, Lord. I'm just going to put on a different necklace. But you don't ever want to be without it, really.
Yeah, it's like if you feel like in order to do something, it's something God wouldn't approve of, and you're so certain of that you are going to distance yourself from God, whether that's through turning over a picture or taking off a symbol of your faith, or I mean, even like, I don't know, going shopping in a shop that you know actually isn't very ethical because of her business practices, and you deliberately take off your clericals to do it, or like you travel like really far to do it so people in the parish can't see that you do this. Like, there's just something about it's hiding.
Yeah.
And do you remember when we had at college, we had the sex and gender module?
Yeah.
And there was a whole session which was about guilt and shame, and it's when you hide stuff, that's when you know it's something wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's the hiding and the secrecy and the shame and the guilt which make things spiral into so much worse.
I think there's a danger in saying that without thinking of nuances, because people have hidden their sexuality because they think it's wrong, and that's not the case. But I think this is something different that we're talking about.
That's true.
No, that's right. I think from my perspective, it's more that she feels that she has to hide it from Jesus. That shows she needs to do a bit more reflecting on what's happening.
And that's the thing that it's interesting about sin, is that actually sin is the stuff that separates us from God, or that puts us before God, which is why we have confession every week, to kind of like become aware of that, to say sorry, to repent, and like to receive God's forgiveness, because God doesn't want to be outside of it with us. Like, God wants to be in the middle and up front every second of our lives, in every single season, in every single feeling. And actually there's been times in my life where I've wanted distance from God, or I felt angry, or I've been grieving and not known how to cope, that sort of thing. But actually, whether it's distance that we're putting in place, or we think, you know, we have to, it's just got to remember that God never wants that from us, especially when we're going through a season when we're asking big questions as well.
This may be controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think that what is sinful is not the fact that Geraldine is, or not necessarily the fact that Geraldine is entering into a sexual relationship, it's the fact that she feels a need to hide it from God and distance herself from God. So, and I want to make it clear, I'm not going to pass judgment on her relationship.
Yeah.
But it's a fact that it's her relationship with God. That's
I think she knows, well, again, this could be saying too much, but I wonder if she knows that it's walking her down a path that is not like the path that God, or like that, that would delight God's heart that she walked down.
It's just sad. It's sad that she doesn't feel like this is a relationship in which which God would celebrate.
Exactly. And that has got to be your number one thing, I think, with finding a partner to share your life with.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. We're all getting deep, aren't we?
To have a Jane Austen analogy with it, we can tell this bloke's a bit of a Wickham to begin with, can't we? He's just a bit too charming, a bit too flirty, and we just think he's going to be bad news, isn't he?
Yeah. And I think Geraldine knows that as well.
Yeah, and I think it ties into a kind of loneliness, and best friend's just kind of got married and all this kind of stuff, and just going, I just want someone to really fancy me, and Simon is that person.
And like, I mean, if we are reading into it that maybe she hasn't had penetrative sex before, there's a really sad interpretation, and sad as in a tragic, not that's so sad of you, which is maybe she is, because she's turning 30 soon, turning 40 soon? Is it?
Yeah.
The big 4-0 that's coming up?
Yeah.
No, that's later. No, but anyway, because of kind of her age and the fact that Alice is younger, does she feel like she just wants to lose her virginity? Like she doesn't want to be the 40-year-old virgin? Or like society really paints a shame about remaining a virgin as well.
Yeah, that's weird,
There's
isn't
this
it?
whole thing about it's shameful to not have sex just as much as it is shameful to have sex.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
True. So when the doorbell goes, we're all rather excited, aren't we?
Yeah.
Geraldine's very excited.
But no, it's Owen. And Owen's at the door with a list of words that he wants to check whether he's allowed to say them or not. And no is basically the case to all of them. But then the doorbell goes again, and it's Simon.
So finally he arrives.
Owen is brilliant at this point and really protective of Geraldine and has heard her say, no, I'm busy. And says to Simon, the vicar's busy, he can come back tomorrow, and takes him away, which is really great.
Nice to know when you're not wanted, mate. Come on.
Yeah.
And what's really nice, I think, about Owen and the growth we've seen, at least in this episode, is he doesn't do what you expect Owen to do, which is immediately the vicar opens the door and she's looking scrummy, and he doesn't immediately try to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And press his suit.
He does say wow, but he doesn't do any more than that.
Yeah, he doesn't do any more than just saying wow.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, knowing Owen, he could have tried to kiss her, he could have made some very lewd comments to her, but he doesn't. So props to Owen for growth, at least for this moment.
Oh dear.
So yes, he escorts Simon away.
And the doorbell goes again, and it's Alice and Hugo. And Alice I must know that Simon's coming over tonight, because she asks if he's there yet, because they've brought her a present, and it's the thing that Hugo finds Alice totally irresistible in, her pink anorak. And so they've brought her a pink anorak to wear to seduce.
Sweet, really.
And she puts it on, and goodness me, Hugo's aroused. Alice thinks it's beautiful, and the doorbell rings again, and oh, who could that be? And it's Simon. He comes in.
Free from Owen.
He's escaped Owen, and Geraldine's there in her lovely red dress, which is now covered in a bright pink parka.
Which actually Simon does like. Doesn't he growl when he sees her in it? Doesn't he go or something like that?
He does.
He goes
he
ruff,
does. So maybe it's a Horton family thing.
It must be, yeah.
Maybe he's teasing. I don't want to yuck anyone's yum. It's not. I find it a bit weird, but
Alice says, right, I think it's time we left these two alone, and Geraldine's very grateful, and Alice says, yep, so we'll just go and pop into the kitchen and have a brew.
Yeah, you guys just carry on, enjoy.
And when you're ready to go, Simon, we'll give you a lift home.
Yeah, which is just adorable. It's beautiful.
they're trying to chaperone, which is lovely.
Yeah, and they've thought about the fact that they might want some privacy, so we're going to a different room, but haven't quite understood, what Simon might be doing there.
They had plans of their own.
So Geraldine needs to trying to make it clear that, you don't need to stay here because Simon's booked into a hotel, in air quotes, that's
in Wales.
In Wales. It's a very good hotel. Trying to get them to leave, and eventually they do go, and Alice gives the advice of righty-ho, lots of chapstick, no tongues. So and one of the things I love about this is, because they do it in other episodes, is that Simon then moves to the sofa arm to sit down so that he's short enough, because lo and behold, when Geraldine comes back, they have a bit of a smoochy kiss.
They have a lovely snog, and then they start heading up to her bedroom.
Yes, with champagne.
And then the doorbell goes.
And she says, ignore it, and starts walking up the stairs, which is good for Geraldine, that
It is good.
That's progress. And then the door knocks again, and so she comes down and says, I hate being a vicar, opens the door, and it's Jim and Frank. And they're stood at the door saying, you know how you said that if we had a big problem, we could come to you, and you know, all this kind of stuff. Well, we've got a really big problem. Can we talk? And she's like, oh, yeah, of course, come on in. And you think there's a really serious issue about to happen, but what's the problem that they're dealing with?
A crossword.
Crossword puzzle.
Which Geraldine makes up an answer to.
Ploddy pop.
And then Jim, bless him, actually does have quite a big problem.
Oh,
yeah.
His wife is having an affair with her female cousin.
Yes, but
Brenda.
he says that problem will keep till morning. They start to disappear, and lo and behold, the doorbell rings again, and Geraldine roars in anger, and it's David who's brought the Scrabble that he wanted to play with her, and so she ends up going back into the bedroom and playing Scrabble with Jim, Frank.
Not in the bedroom.
Back into the lounge.
Yeah. Back into the bedroom to play Scrabble with all of them, eh? There's something new.
Scrabble's a euphemism.
They start playing Scrabble. Geraldine spells out, leave you remorseless bastard.
Yeah, that's such a funny scene, to be fair.
So good.
David knows exactly what's happening. And I
Do
think
you
Geraldine
think so?
knows. Well, the very fact that particular wording, I think David knows she's trying to get rid of them.
Yes, but not what's going on.
Yeah, I think it comes
know.
as a total shocker, I do.
I don't know.
It has been a good couple of hours, probably, at least, hasn't it? Since Simon first went upstairs. The doorbell's rung multiple times. They've been scrabbling away. Geraldine's been giving hints, but not, like, unkind enough to say, guys, or, like, forthright enough to go, guys, you need to leave.
Yeah.
Maybe 2, maybe 3 hours pass, and down comes, sorry, I've set the scene now, over to you to give us the visual.
Well, he comes down, buck-ass nude, apart from wearing Geraldine's dressing
Let
gown.
me tell you, I screamed.
It looks silky as well to me.
He is a very tall man, and so it doesn't leave a lot to the imagination. We're skirting on thighs, and he comes down and actually says some really good things in some ways about Geraldine.
Yeah, you're right. Is what Simon says appropriate?
If they were married,
Yeah.
yes.
He says this, I'm so sorry to interrupt. It's just that I've been waiting for this gorgeous creature for hours. She won't tell you herself, of course. She's your vicar. She always puts your happiness above her own. But I can't help thinking on this one occasion she might quite like you to go.
And that's the thing, I think this is a really lovely, loving, kind thing of a partner or a spouse to say, like, say if it was their birthday or a special anniversary or an unplanned visit or her day off. It's great.
If this was Harry, Geraldine's future husband.
Yes, exactly. It's the right thing, the wrong guy.
Yeah.
Because it's the reason why she's not saying no to them. She knows that she shouldn't be there, so she's not going to have the guts to say, guys, you need to head off, because she's like, "Argh."
He is exposing her.
He's
That
nearly
is very
exposed himself.
true. Very.
I mean, yeah, he's exposing himself.
True.
He's also exposing her in actually quite an uncomfortable way. He's making it explicit, because she said before, it's okay for a vicar to have sex as long as she doesn't rub it in her parishioners' faces. He is rubbing it in their faces. And
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
I'm sort of wondering here if there's that dynamic between the two brothers and it's
Absolutely.
because it's David
Yeah.
that he's rubbing it in.
Yes. I think because he could have been fully clothed and come down and said this.
Really could have.
And it,
He's making a point and a half, isn't he?
He
Yeah.
had the time to get dressed.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the big question is, the champagne's probably warm by now.
Ugh.
What a blooming waste.
Jenny, it was never about the champagne.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably
he
wasn't even
shoos them
champagne, was
out.
it? Anyway.
Yes. They all get kicked
He
out.
chooses
David says, I hope you know what you're doing, which I think is a good warning from David. Frank, bless him, asks if they need a condom and then comes back with 2 cigarettes for afterwards and all this kind of stuff.
Dear.
And finally, she gets upstairs, and we zoom out from the vicarage, and there are electricity sparks and fireworks that go off from Geraldine's bedroom. And then the next morning, we see her come down, bed hair just everywhere, fully ruffled, and she comes down, drinks some Lucozade, and heads straight back upstairs.
Yeah. And then we get a lovely montage of them on dates.
Yeah.
Which I think on first watch is very romantic. I think when you watch it again, you can see a few warning signs. I think it's very much Geraldine initiating affection.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's something else I'll mention a little bit later, I think.
Yes.
But there's also the iconic puddle scene.
Yes,
Oh,
the scene
yeah,
that
I do.
many people will know, even if you've never watched Vicar of Dibley, where they're, I was going to say gaily splashing in puddles, and I'm going to stick with that because I feel it's correct how they're jumping in puddles, and then she picks a big one and she goes straight down under, and it's very very funny.
Oh, brilliant.
I think as a perception of the relationship from Geraldine's perspective, I think what we see is a very innocent love.
Yeah,
In that sense of it's very kind of coupley and they're wearing jumpers.
yeah.
And
The
they're
music's
walking
boy
through the
zone.
countryside.
Yeah.
And they're holding hands and feeding each other. And I feel that this is Geraldine's interpretation and what she believes their relationship is.
Yeah. And it's attracted local gossip because David in Horton Manor is there with Hugo and with Owen. They're having a brew and they're talking about this relationship that Geraldine is having with Simon. And it's very different sides, isn't it? Owen's very much the opinion of, you know what, whatever. You know, if she's happy, we don't judge her and we let her get on with stuff. And David's like, she's the vicar. She shouldn't be cavorting round and having a man stay in her bed with her.
That is the bit that they're really worried about as well, isn't it? It's specifically the bed, like, where he's sleeping that's the issue.
Yes, the concern about them going around having sex willy-nilly. And Owen says...
And you can't do it with a willy that's nilly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The willy's got to be
Yeah.
willing.
So good. There's so many great moments in this episode.
Again, I think a lot of David's objection comes because it's his brother and not necessarily... I mean, he says, oh, Jesus is against it, but it doesn't feel like his heart is in that objection.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I disagree. I think he'd feel like this about whoever it is, although I do agree with you that I think there is extra tension because it's his brother. I definitely do pick up on a rivalry between them, but I think he does. I think he just takes a quite conservative position on this.
And so we go from their living room to Geraldine's living room, and Simon's there, and Geraldine, and she's really relaxed. She's there in her jib jams, and just, you know, she says, should we go to bed? And he's like, let's have a coffee first. And then she says, wait a second, we can have ice cream. And she's had a new instalment of a massive freezer that is just full to the brim of ice cream, and he has a little small pot, and she has a big one, and then they go back in the room.
I think it's interesting if you look at Simon's face while she's talking about the freezer. I think something I picked up on, and this was in that montage, is there's another scene where he's watching her eat, and he doesn't find it a lovely experience.
Is it because she steals the Mars bar?
It's just there's a look on his face that says that is a bit judgmental. And you don't want a partner who's going to be judgmental.
I read that as more that he was disappointed that there was no Mars bar left for him.
Yeah.
Well, let's maybe not delve into it too much, but he doesn't. I don't think he approves of the ice cream freezer. He gets a tiny pot of ice cream,
and he's informed that it's got a little spoon to eat, and he's starting to eat the ice cream with the spoon, and he says it's not working, and she thinks that means the spoon, so she says she'll get a big one, and he's like, no, the relationship isn't working. Us and me.
Classic messing around behaviour.
Yeah.
Just the way he says it, it's really clear that he's got what he wants out of this relationship. Even at that point where he's deferring them going up to bed, and the way he says it, you're like, oh, let's have a coffee first. He's lost interest.
Yeah.
And it's just heartbreaking for Geraldine, because we've just had this montage of her thinking this is a beautiful relationship. He wanted one thing. There, Simon.
And he admits that there's someone else. There's a girl in Liverpool, and it's a bit of a Ross and Rachel, we were on a break situation that I think he's just cheated on this other girl. They've had a bit of a falling out, and then has come up here and, come down here from Liverpool if we're in Oxford. And
taken the opportunity to see Jerry.
Yeah, slept with someone who is very keen on him and is very obviously keen on him. And then, he says all these romantic things not even romantic things. He says things about the autumns and winds, and maybe we're just, moving on and let's see what winter brings. And she just calls him out of it and saying, we could call it that, or get out my house, you treacherous, gigantic, elongated bastard.
Yeah. Which is, I think, appropriate response. And what's really admirable is she doesn't really get super emotional, throw a fit about this. It would be deserved if she did. She's actually quite level-headed about getting rid of him. And Simon is just such a, that classic him saying, oh, we're moving too fast. Isn't about the fact that they've been having sex. It's about that this is becoming a comfortable relationship.
And that's not what he wanted.
And that's not what he wanted. And him then trying to wax all poetic about the seasons of life and, maybe down the line. You're just playing with her emotions. And no. You just want to have a little nest far away from your steady girlfriend where you can come every now and then, and with someone who you can guarantee isn't going to be talking about it.
Yes, so she's calm but angry, and kicks him out and takes the ice cream from him as well, which is exactly as it should be. And then we go to the parish hall, and there's a whole comedy thing about drilling and not being able to hear what's going on, which is important for later on. And Geraldine turns up, and due to the circumstances goes on a massive rant about all men being this and useless and da-da-da-da-da. And we miss part of the rant because the drilling is, which is probably for the best, because... we don't hear what we said, but we can imagine the kind of things that she might be saying to them.
Yeah,
really
and then we get
done.
this little montage. Is it again a montage where we're seeing she starts lingering and she starts eating lots of chocolate, and she's upset, and she we see her, she's kind of laying around in the kitchen with all her ice cream, and Alice comes in, asks if she's going to come to church.
Yeah, says it's Sunday.
Yeah, Geraldine says no. Should she have signed herself off?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Give herself a break and some space.
Definitely think so. And yeah, she just goes into this complete spiral. And we don't think it's just about the relationship. It's about how the relationship's played out in public.
Yeah.
And so she decides, no, I'm not going to church today, not doing that. And then they have a meeting in the parish. Well, it's not a meeting in the parish council because Alice is there, but they're just chatting about Sunday and that we can't have another Sunday with the vicar off because Frank preached and it went on for hours and someone died.
Although he was going to die anyway, so we can't feel too bad about it, we're told.
Well done them for keeping the service going without a priest.
Yeah.
And this actually is sort of what does happen. If a priest doesn't turn up, you have a service of the word, it's called, which is basically it's not communion. Someone talks. Legally, I believe there is a book of authorised sermons we're allowed to read. I know in the Methodist Church it's a book of Wesley's sermons.
Right.
And I'm sure I heard that there's a book of Cranmer's sermons or something.
Oh, there you go.
Gosh.
But
Good to know.
It seems they have a lay preacher, which might be an official title that Frank has, that he has been trained to preach, or it might just be that he's a lay person, i.e. someone who isn't ordained, who's preached that day. But that might be another interesting dynamic, that Frank is there.
Well, really, and what a skill to stand up with no preparation and talk about, to be honest, talk about anything, let alone talk about the readings for 2.5 hours.
Yeah,
Well done,
true.
Frank.
So they're coming up with a plan to how to help Geraldine, and Alice comes up with a plan of creating a digital Simon to help her get out of it, and that probably isn't going to work because it's the affection and the loneliness.
Because Geraldine's problem is not necessarily about the relationship going wrong, and it's definitely not about Simon as much as he's the one who's caused the problems. I think it's Geraldine's sense of guilt and her sense of shame over what's happened, but also her mourning the loss of this hope she had for the future where she would have companionship and affection.
Yeah.
It's not actually about Simon. I think she knows that Simon... At this point, Simon's gone. She's sent him away. She does not want Simon back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we see her again in the vicarage, eating her body weight in Smarties, and there's a doorbell. The doorbell rings, and Geraldine shouts, "Go away!" And it's Alice, and she says, "I've just got something for you. I've posted it through," and it's photos of the newest addition to the Horton family. It's the scan, and that's the thing that snaps Jerry out of it. And she opens the door, and they have a look through the scans of Alice's baby, and it's just lovely.
That's a turnaround moment, isn't it? We can literally see her heart melt, and she's like, "Oh!" She stops what she's doing, puts everything down, goes straight over to the door, unlocks it. And doesn't even look at Alice. She's just staring at the pictures, just gushing over them, which is really lovely to see. And I think Alice, then she comes in, doesn't she? And they get to have a chat, the two of them.
And Alice asks her if she'd be up for coming back. And Geraldine says she can't stand up in that pulpit and talk about right and wrong. And she's just not right with God, and she's not right within herself.
Yeah.
And so that's the crux, really, isn't it, of why she's been away. Like you've been saying, it's not about Simon. It's her own, her own disappointment, a guilt, a shame. It's the, turning around the portrait of Jesus on the wall that makes her think, well, I can't do what I'm supposed to do because I couldn't even do it myself. Like, how possibly can I tell others about right and wrong when I can't even, follow in that way myself? Which is, again, it's one of a big thing for vicars, for lay preachers, lay ministers, for Christians in general. We're invited to go and tell the good news, but so often we forget it ourselves, and the lessons that we learn are really cyclical, aren't they? But this is just this has been so public as well. I wonder if that's where a lot of the problems come from.
And so she's written a letter, and she wants Alice to give it to David and the rest of the parish council. And it turns up in the next parish council meeting, and she's tendered her resignation, and she wants to resign from the post. Now, all of us watched this and went, well, that's not how you resign. You can't leave a job like that. And they read the letter, but we don't get to see what's in the letter. And I'd really like to know what she said in her resignation letter. And they say together, we've got to decide what we're going to do about this. How do we actually leave our jobs?
Well, you don't contact your PCC first.
No.
I think you'd have to go to the Archdeacon first, would you?
The bishop.
I would, I think.
You send a letter to your bishop,
to.
don't you, to say you'd like to resign, and you have to give 3 months' notice and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, right.
None of us have resigned from vicar jobs yet, so we don't know
we
how we
can't
do
speak
it.
from experience.
Officially.
Hopefully we never will
even
have
like
to.
if you get a new job, you resign from your current position so that you can get a new job.
Yeah. But the way they do it isn't how they do it. But it works for the drama.
For the drams.
And we're back then at Geraldine's vicarage, and Alice is there, and Geraldine wants to know, do they read the letter? What do they think about it? Do they accept the resignation? And Alice says, come outside. And they go out because the rest of them want to talk to her. And there's a massive banner in the village green for everyone to see that says, that tall git Simon may have bonked you and dumped you like an old jockstrap, but we still love you.
And this was brilliant because Jerry, reading, she's like, okay, right, yeah, okay, that's pretty clear then. And again, it's just one of those moments where, I don't know, it's just memorable. And I just think dealt with in such a Geraldine way.
And such growth for David.
Yeah.
Because at the end of that parish council scene, he
Yeah.
said, I think we know what we need to do. And in previous seasons, that would have been a letter to the bishop. But now it's let's make a ridiculous banner and let her know that we love her. It's just lovely.
Yeah.
But it's very public.
It is.
As well.
Very public.
It's like
It's
all her
also in
dirty
the
laundry
village,
that's already been out. It's like they've added another bra into the pile.
But at the same time, I was thinking it also makes it less of an issue because it just kind of normalizes it as this idiot man has screwed you over, literally.
Screwed you over. Yeah.
But you know
But we
what?
still
That's a human
want you.
experience.
Yeah.
It just makes it into it. This is a thing that happened. It's not a big, thing you need to resign over.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Acceptance, welcome, grace, forgiveness. It's
But if
all
we're
good.
bringing this back to the reality of ministry, this is the kind of thing where you might get in big trouble with your bishop.
Yeah.
And there is something called a CDM, which is a clergy disciplinary measure, where for misbehaving clergy, they get in trouble and get told off. And it's a very, very big, serious thing. And do you think Geraldine might get a CDM from this?
I think she would definitely be called in for a conversation. I think whether it was an actual CDM would depend on whether complaints were made.
Yeah. All of this would depend on the bishop finding out about all of this. And knowing Geraldine's relationship with the bishop and what the bishop gets up to, I think he would be particularly fussed.
I think if Simon was a complete toe rag and decided to ruin Geraldine's life and wrote to the bishop about what had been going on, or if someone else in the parish wrote to the bishop and said, this has really traumatised me, I can't trust my priest because of this has happened, then I think there would be CDM processes would be started.
And would that be sort of like you'd have to leave your job, or you'd have to take
Time off.
extended period away, or like does it vary the different kind of
Initially you're suspended.
things that happen?
Initially you're suspended
Okay,
while
yeah.
investigation occurs.
Oh, yeah. It's quite
Really big
intense as it is, isn't it?
But Geraldine says she needs a holiday, and
She does.
we think she does. And so she says that she'll ask Frank to preach for the next month. And they all go, no.
He's absolutely delighted. His face, it's so funny because instead of getting a line, his face lights up. Yes, the honour, the privilege. And then literally, as you say, each one after the other. No. And then Jim at the end.
But then she says she's joking. And actually, she's all right. And yeah, it's a happy Jerry. Well, not happy, a bruised and battered Jerry. And I think probably quite a humbled Jerry as well. But knows how loved she is by her parishioners.
Yeah, bless her. It's a wonderful episode, actually.
Do you think this is something, Geraldine, for the narrative, I'm not talking this as a human, but do you think this, for the narrative of a show, this is something Geraldine had to go through in order that when she finally meets our Harry, she gets her happy ending?
Yeah. We needed to see a big breakup, didn't we? We need to see...
Yeah.
Because we've had lots of flirtations, but...
we need to see her dealing with how things go wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I think it'd be interesting to watch the episode where it goes right off the back of that to see how the others react to it.
But we're not that far away from it.
Crazy.
So that's been our episode today. We've talked a lot about sex. We've gone into lots of interesting details and debates. If you have anything further based on this conversation that you'd like us to talk about, please do let us know. Drop us
an email or talk to us on social media. We are at Vicars Watch or at Vicars Watch Dibley on different things, and it's vicarswatchdibley@gmail.com. So do talk to us. We'd love to hear your opinions. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Vicars Watch Dibley. Thank you to Toby for editing our ramblings.
Any views expressed in this podcast
Here's a joke for you lovely ladies. How did the telephone propose to its girlfriend?
Or any other organisations with which we
gave her a ring.
And
as always, thanks for listening.